Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the sixth episode of the School of Resistance, a live stream format that invites experts on change around the world to discuss valuable alternatives for the future and to create a blueprint for a politics of resistance. Today's episode is supported by the initiatives Watch the Met Alarm Phone and Brugge, and is entitled Our Human Rights Are on Fire, Towards a Humane Migration Policy. And we're very honored to discuss this today with human rights activist Effie Latsoudi, and normally also human rights activist Mohammed Al-Kashev and Musi Sarai, that unfortunately are not there yet to join us, probably because of urgent reasons, and we'll stay in touch about if they can join maybe later. When on March 26, reports uncovered the first COVID-19 cases along the Greek-Turkish border, several NGOs and human rights activists demanded the immediate evacuation of the refugee camps. Yet, Europe remained silent. When a fire broke out during the night of September the 8th and destroyed the overcrowded refugee camp Moria on the Greek island Lesbos, the same NGOs and human rights activists demanded the immediate accommodation of refugees by the European member states. But once more, Europe remained silent. While the pandemic forces people around the world to stay at home, another large group of people is looking for one. In this episode, we will, together with hopefully Musi Sarai, Mohammed Al-Kashev, and luckily Effie Latsoudi, discuss Europe's inadequacy and unwillingness in addressing the migration crisis. Before we start this conversation, I quickly want to remind the people listening at this moment of the possibility to engage in the conversation. For everyone who's watching live, you're welcome to send us your questions by emailing to schoolofresistance@antigent.be or by commenting on the live stream on the Facebook pages of Antigent or IIPM, or on Twitter via the hashtag School of Resistance. Effie Latsoudi, it's a great honor. Thank you so much for joining us. I know you're in a very urgent situation, so even more, I'm very honored that you made some time free for this important conversation. Just to introduce you further, you are a psychologist, human rights activist, and the driving force behind Pikpa Camp, an independent, open refugee camp aiming to be a community-based space drawing on the principles of solidarity, empowerment, and active participation. In 2016, you received the UNHCR Nansen Refugee Award for your long-standing commitment to helping refugees on the Aegean Sea. Maybe as a first broad introduction question, could you tell a bit more about how Pikpa Camp came into being and how it operates?
Yes, thank you very much for the invitation, and I feel honored to share about Pikpa and our work with the School of Resistance, because actually all what we do is about resistance and hope and our future. So it's really important. How we started Pikpa. Look, I live in Lesbos since 2001, and actually I didn't know much about what is happening with refugees till some friends of mine talked to me about the deaths and the people that were already buried in the cemetery of Lesbos. And that's how I started to understand that there was already a camp, there was detention, violation of the rights of the people, and silence in the European level, in the Greek level, and of course in the local society. And that people detained, they were not even people for us. They were something like some illegal alien, whatever. It's sad for our society to live like this, to accept that people are suffering next to us and we don't react, we don't want to know. And this is something that mobilized me to understand more, to participate in local groups, to become an activist in this field, an active citizen, actually. So in 2012, we had already a huge financial crisis in Greece. We have a very tragic moment because the Golden Dawn, the fascist party, was first time in the parliament, and that shocked us. And most of the rhetoric of this party was based on refugees, criminality, danger, and all this, and on the fact that refugees were excluded by the society, were living in a very in bad conditions, and they were also living, behind. I mean, they were hiding somehow. They were not criminals, but somehow they were excluded and criminalized, and that also fed all this rhetoric and all this fear in the society. We faced this tragic moment where this party became powerful in the Greek parliament. It was like, so we started a network of solidarity. It's very important to talk about this now and on your context, because we were desperate. I mean, desperate, and at this point, and attacked by different sides, financially, politically, and at this point, we decided to create a network of solidarity to unite our power in the local level, different people, very different politically, and to support the Greek people and the refugees. And that's how we asked for this abandoned summer camp for children, to use it as an open solidarity place for hospitality, that the local people will support the refugees. At the beginning, it was impossible because the authorities, it was out of the question. And they told us, no, this cannot happen. There is no police, there is no authority. What are you? Refugees need to be arrested and detained. At the end, because we were insisting and because there were many people sleeping in the streets, and the locals started to mobilize, it became also visible. They gave us the keys and we started operating in November 2012. And that's how PICPA started.
And so you got a place. Could you say a little bit more? Because it's a place on the island that you appointed, that you wished for, or this was given by the authorities and decided like this is the place you get?
It was a summer camp for children that was abandoned, a nice location with small wooden houses that was abandoned because of the financial crisis and was falling apart. We knew the place and we appointed the place because in the emergency, in the No Border Camp of 2009, where many people were reacting in the inside and outside the detention place of Pagani back then. We put pressure and 400 minors were hosted there, so we knew the place. We also had the first families that they were in the streets, not arrested by the police. We took them to PICPA. That was like a criminal action back then for the authorities, but we took them to PICPA and we negotiated with the authorities that these people should not be arrested. The situation is bad on the island, and you can register them and let them go. So it was the first time that we managed to negotiate with the authorities under the pressure of a movement, No Border Camp, 2009. So they accepted that families should not be separated and they should not be detained. For the first time, it was a step. We asked for this place, and we didn't believe, actually. It was like an utopia. PICPA, when we were talking about this with our friends, they told us it's impossible. In the Greek context, it's impossible to allow an open, self-organized place without the presence of the police. It's impossible. It was the impossible. And for me, that's the hope, that when we come together, we can do it.
How many people were involved, and how was this? What do you think made it possible? Was it because so many people from the islands
Yes.
were involved and put
Yes.
pressure?
There were many people from different parts of the society. They were also desperate because of the financial crisis that brought, and because of the Golden Dawn threat. And it was also the church involved, which is not very usual in the Greek context. And politically, it was very wide.
Mm.
And the fact that local people were participating made it possible, I believe. And the fact that we knew and we used our knowledge of what could happen, because our idea was like, okay, detention is not working, is not for refugees. You make people suffering, and suffering brings more violence. And it's just a punishment. It doesn't make sense. People need to be treated by people, need to be supported by people, and also isolating refugees makes us creates a distance between us, and we feel that they are something different, which is not the case. It was more effective, and it was no cost, because we were bringing the food, the clothes, and it was just a dignified place with nothing, no money involved.
So how did it operate? I mean, the context seems extremely precarious. Everyone was suffering under financial crisis, but I guess you did needed some resources, water, showers, I don't know, food.
Now, there was water. There was, the premises were there. There was water, electricity. We have been offered blankets, pillows, all these things from different sources, organization, local people, churches, all over the Greece. And also we were cooking there from ourselves. The people were cooking in their houses. It was a very, we were calling this as the miracle of Pikpa, because when the food was finishing, you could have a group of people who arrived in the middle of the night, and they were bringing them to Pikpa. And we didn't have food. And someone was arriving with a kettle or cooking. It was really amazing. It was really heartwarming. Yeah. And to see all this, and at this point, 2012, even my friends, they were telling me, why are they coming? We are in a crisis, because it was also Syrians who started to arrive, and the numbers were big. And I was thinking, okay, they don't choose to come, but many people were afraid of these people arriving. But when they saw them in the streets, when they were able to support them with food, the minimum, or some clothes, they started to change the mentality, and they started to feel proud for what they are doing. And I remember pictures of people, full of people coming with their food and with the clothes, with their kids. It changed a lot. This at this moment, the mentality of the local people.
This was 8 years ago, in 2012. Pikpa still exists. How did it grow, develop, change over the course of years, and what did it meant for you also as a coordinator, initiator? How has your role been defined throughout Pikpa?
I was feeling from the beginning as a part of a group of people, and I'm always highlighting that this is not possible by one or two people. This is possible by many people. And maybe you cannot have the names, but there are so many people that they give their energy, their work, their imagination, even their dreaming, that make this kind of work possible and effective. So I feel part of this, and that is the strongest part of this work. And I felt also that we were part of something that is important to happen as an example, and that gave us the power to believe that when you believe in something, you can do it, and you come together with other people, you can do it, and you are in the right track. You are doing the right thing for us. That was the thing. PICPA developed throughout the years. We changed many times the way we were operating. Like we had asylum seekers that they were staying in PICPA waiting for their asylum to be processed when there was no shelter for the asylum, the people who applied for asylum. We had the homeless refugees that when Moria was created in 2013, that they didn't fit in Moria, or they were taking a paper to go out of Moria, but then there was no boat and they were staying in the streets, so we were supporting them. It was quite flexible, and that's also a very dynamic part of this, because it was not a project, it was not an EU project, it was a social place, flexible, open. In 2000, and we had many eviction also threats. Every year, the municipality, the authorities were taking a decision, let's close PICPA, we give this place back to the locals, which is great when we don't face this level of crisis in Lesbos. So, for example, in 2015, before the big crisis, the mayor had again decided to close the PICPA. The numbers were increasing. You remember it started from 500 in May, and then we went to 8,000 per day in August, September. So we talked to him and we said, okay, great, you can use the place for a summer, but not now. I mean, it's not the moment. Later, he also acknowledged that we did the right thing, because in PICPA in 2015, we hosted almost 26,000 people, and there were people like 200 every day coming and going. It was a huge operation, because we were feeding people in Moria, outside in the port, distributing, connecting with other groups. A lot of volunteers arrived, a lot of people that they wanted to support. We were feeling very proud for being there and hosting all these people that they had no place to go. I mean, pregnant women, sick children, handicapped, a lot of handicapped people, or with severe mental health issues. And I must tell you that from one hand, it was a network of solidarity that made us proud at this point, everywhere in the beaches, welcoming people, an international movement of solidarity that gave also, it was chaotic many times, but that gave a lot of solutions in a completely chaotic situation from the authorities, first of all, no coordination at all. All these people, they made it possible to support other people and to feel proud about the positive movement and the positive position of solidarity. That was the very positive thing at this moment. The other thing was that the borders were open and people were arriving. They had a very difficult time. Moria was a mess, people and garbage everywhere, a mess with the authorities. But at the same time, they were going in 1-2 days, and you could see the hope in the face and the smile coming back, because they were moving to their dream. I mean, to the thing that, to Europe, that they believe that, okay, they will solve all the problems. Anyway, but this possibility to move out was very important.
Yes, yes.
At the same time, I must say also the very tragic part of this 2015 moment for us, we were hosting also the victims, that we did it since 2013, the victims of tragedies, the people who survived shipwrecks, the relatives. We had been participating for months in funerals every day. That was the tragic part and the very hard part that traumatized us, but also made us feel very proud that we managed to be there for these people and to share with them and not to ignore them or to leave them alone.
Thank you, Effie. That's quite an amazing story that I have many more questions about. But in the meantime, I'm very happy to announce and see that Mohammed Al-Kashev has been able to join us. Very warm welcome to you. Thank you for joining us. We already started the conversation. Mohammed Al-Kashev and Effie Latsoudi just explained about Pikpa camp, a camp that she created with many others at Lesbos in 2012, so 8 years ago, and the many aspects involved in that. But let me first proper introduce you further, Mohammed Al-Kashev. You are a human rights lawyer and a researcher on refugee rights and migrant movements. You work as a consultant and advocate, and you're also a member with Watch the Med Alarm Phone, a network supporting refugees and migrants crossing the Mediterranean Sea and the right of freedom of movement. So maybe before we start talking more with Effie about Pikpa and also many questions I have for both of you, could you maybe first tell a bit more about Watch the Med Alarm Phone, this organization that you have been working with for quite some time, and how it functions?
Hello all. Hello, Lara. Thanks for introducing me. I would say Alarm Phone started as the main project of Watch the Med, which is an NGO working in documentation, human rights violation, specifically at sea. The need of having Alarm Phone actually was obvious in 2015 when there was a big shipwreck happened full of Eritreans and Somalians people and Ethiopians from East African countries. And it was scandal because they tried many times before drowning to contact the concerned authority called MRCC Rome. The Italian Coast Guard was aware and informed about the situation, but people left there to die. So the idea came that if there was a kind of mediator or a hotline from the civil society that they can reach, so it would be easily to communicate with the concerned authorities, to communicate with the MRCCs. MRCC, for the people who doesn't know it, it's a Maritime Rescue Coordination Center, which meant to be the center that coordinate the rescue missions in the time of distress. And actually, Alarm Phone now considered as an important hotline for the people crossing the sea, for the people who don't migrate, let's say, or travel unofficially from North Africa or from Africa, crossing the Mediterranean to Europe. And how it's functioning, they contact, when the people are in distress at the sea, they contact Alarm Phone and give them a clear information about their location, about how many are them, about the condition on the boat, what the type of the boat they use, if it's a rubber boat, wooden boat, whatever. And then Alarm Phone take all this information and start to communicate with the concerned authority and start to write about the cases on different social media channels to make a public awareness about the situation.
And so actually this kind of civil tool instrument was able to put pressure and to make sure that people would really get out and rescue. Yeah, that they could put the pressure that people on the boat couldn't put themselves.
Yeah, actually, most of the cases that Alarm Phone would succeed somehow to put the pressure and the political pressure, the public pressure on the states, on the different state institutions to rescue people and to save their lives. And also, as we see, also there is the civil fleet, like the different civil rescue NGOs in the Mediterranean, like Sea-Watch, Mediterranean, and different actors at the sea. And also we communicate with them after the case become public and become official to the states.
And can I ask what your specific position is within the organization? Like, what is your role, or would you really receive also these kind of calls, or what is your position?
So in this network, we have no certain positions, but we have kind of experienced people somehow. So I'm, as a lawyer and advocacy officer, sometimes I represent the network in public events. I do advocacy work concerning the migration issue in the Mediterranean. But also Alarm Phone works as shift teams. So we have teams that operate in shift works for 24 hours, 7 days. And every single member has the rule to take shifts and to be available for holding the shift phone and to be working with the hotline to receive calls and to receive distress calls from people while they are crossing.
Thank you. Very clear. Maybe a follow-up question to you both. Effie and I were already speaking a bit about it on forehand when we were preparing this conversation. So, of course, since the fires at Moria camp, there's a huge attention in the press again if it comes to Europe's migration policies. And the question that rises is this something positive? Is this a momentum that we're living at the moment that we could maybe push for certain things? Or are you actually both very concerned about certain things that are not mentioned or not getting enough attention? If you both would like to respond.
If you want me to start.
Yes, please.
Okay, we must say, and we must make the point that in all this tragedy throughout the years, and because I'm involved since 2005 and I can see the difference, and because we've been talking about Alarm Phone in Lesbos at this time when it was starting, and it's very important that this happened. It's very important that we have this. Somehow this tragedy of Lesbos became a focus, and it's not invisible anymore. So yes, we have, and I find it positive that we have media attention. It could be a worst, it's a disaster still, but it could be a worse disaster without the press attention. But it's very frustrating that there is so much coverage of the media coverage, and still we have these conditions. We had Moria for years. People were literally tortured in Moria. They were suffering. Human rights were violated. Lots of corruption, lots of money going around in this city place, and lots of deaths. And the media attention was, okay, sometimes more, sometimes less, but it was not invisible like before. So yes, I believe that it's positive, but still we have a disaster which is documented somehow. I don't know what else needs to be said or shared and what can make the change. Because still a new camp is built, which is completely inhuman. Pushback are happening, groups are criminalized, NGOs are attacked, fascists are very active. I mean, what?
The full tragedy is there, but we're talking about it. But then the question is, what does it move?
Exactly.
Mohammed Al-Kashev, when I would like to mention you shorter, should I say Mohammed or Kashev? How do we call you? Or shall I stay with Mohammed Al-Kashev?
Kashev. Kashev is okay.
Kashev? Okay.
Yes.
What about your perspective on the current media coverage? Is it helpful? What should it focus on more? What is it forgetting? Or what should it mobilize?
Okay, actually, when it comes to Moria, I was there last year. I'm working on the field since 2012 from the other side of the Mediterranean, from Egypt. And I was in contact and in touch with many Syrian refugees who just fled from Egypt to Turkey during which called the summer of migration to cross the Aegean to Greece, to Europe, and they stuck in Lesbos. And at that time, 2014, 2015, I started to hear and to be in a kind of contact on Moria. And last year, I was there for the first time in my life, and I have seen it in reality. I have seen how people are living in tents, how people are living in this olive hill, and they call it the jungle. And it's really describing the situations there. Lack of water, lack of infrastructure, and it's crazy. It's really crazy. Like the camp itself is overloaded, which make people to, or UNHCR and other organizations, to build tents outside. And it's not the first time in Moria to have a fire or a burning incident. Last year, the same date, approximately in September 2019, there was also a fire, a big fire, and people flee from the camp, and they go down to the city, and they sit for hours next to the sea until everything came calm again, and they went back to the camp. There wasn't poor media coverage, and no one covered what happened last year. This year, actually, because it's kind of bigger and the camp burned it down, and there was a lot of noise on the media, there was different reactions, and but still, what we are missing in the media is the voice of the people themselves, the voices of migrants and refugees in Moria. We all experienced the uncertainty during and until this moment, during this COVID crisis internationally, but we still don't feel this is the daily struggle of the migrants and refugees, not just in Lesbos, not just in Moria, but all over the Mediterranean. Even in the camps in the European countries, the uncertainty, you don't know about tomorrow, you don't know how it will be and what you can do. And that's all actually something missing to be announced and mentioned in media coverage.
Yeah, I think that's a very strong point you're making, because it's somehow also reproducing this idea of we talk about them, the others, the refugees, and it stays this kind of huge group of faceless people that are suffering, kind of falling together with the idea of the victim, but it stays very abstract. And what Effie was saying before also, like the whole idea is that they are people like you and me with similar stories, backgrounds, wishes, desires. So the question is maybe also like, what kind of strategies do we need in order for them, for us to be able to identify and see us as one common people? Effie, maybe two-fold question. Kashev was describing this hell on earth called the jungle, Moria. So it raises questions about how Pikpa and Moria were somehow related to each other. Like, was there any communication? Who could decide if someone stayed in Moria or came to Pikpa? Or so I think this dynamic would be interesting to understand better. And then maybe the second question of Kashev, how can we give voice to the people themselves? Maybe you have also some thoughts about that.
Okay, First of all, I must tell you that he didn't describe Moria, because Moria, you cannot describe it. And I cannot describe it. You cannot imagine how people were living there. And he knows that as long as we try, it's difficult to communicate the level of humiliation and the level of uncertainty, the level of violation of rights in Moria. Second, I believe that we don't miss the stories of the refugees. We missed the bridges, as you are talking about, because there are, from my experience here, there are stories of refugees out. There are. If we don't listen to this, if we don't understand that these are people and we don't give them the right channels, is another thing. But stories of refugees are out now. And this, I mean, it has been so much exposed in different media, alternative media, mainstream media, whatever. It's not about information. It's something else that is missing, for sure. Pikpa was referring people from Moria by the main referral pathways, because we wanted the people to be also in to have access to cash program, to all the rights, and also to transfers to mainland. But also we had other organizations supporting, referring people, and we were identifying cases and we were bringing them to Pikpa. So it is the difference between Pikpa and Moria is not only the conditions, it's the fact that people were dignified, they had some kind of control of their life, and of course they did that we couldn't avoid. They also wanted to go, they wanted to move on, they wanted to know what is their future, and they were also under this uncertainty that was mentioned very well, that they don't know what will happen to them. This is a political thing. This was a policy implemented against them. Of course, they had the freedom and they had the space to deal with it better than in Moria, and they didn't have the everyday fights. Also, the fires in Moria, it was every year. In 2016, we had deaths in fires. Last year, we had deaths in fires. People were burned. You cannot imagine this hell. Fires were there, fights were there, deaths were there. Everything was there, no reaction, not real reaction. And most of it, we have to differentiate. There is a policy there. There is information, press, alternative media, whatever, but there is a policy implemented that it's in Greek level, the government, and in European level. And there are money spent for these conditions. It's not, a humanitarian crisis, so many people arrived, what can we do? No, everything was happening under the European funding and the monitoring, and under all this press and whatever. So, I mean, I don't know. I'm not sure that what we are missing is of course, the refugees need to go out and need to speak, but are they speaking as victims? Are they the victims, and we give them also some space to our media? And we are repeating the same and the same. What are we missing in this mess here, in this tragedy of the people? What information are missing?
Kashev, you were saying we do need more stories of refugees themselves. Effie is doubting, but I think she very clearly describes this the situation that actually everything is there in order to change it. So it almost gives you the feeling like it's actually policy. This whole camp and the hell on earth is in a way a terrible, very clear outcome of policy that is implemented. And so what can we do? I mean, what is missing, to paraphrase Effie?
Yeah, just to clarify my point, I'm not saying that there is missing stories. There is missing voices. The people don't speak for themselves, even if they are able and willing and have the capability and the skills to speak out. We experts, Europeans, people concerned about situation, don't give them a proper space to express themselves and express their struggles, because no one will speak about their struggles better than them. So this is the thing. And I totally agree with Effie. There is a lot of information out there. Like the information nowadays is too much for anyone want to educate themselves to know about the situation. It's out there. It's not the lack of information, not lack of the stories. But the thing, as you mentioned also about the political intentions, there is no political intention to change the situation. Even if there is a lot of initiatives around Europe, for example, if we take Germany as an example, there is this big initiative called Wir haben Platz, we have a place. And there is a work coordinating with the municipalities, with the cities themselves, with official bodies of the state. But until this moment, there is no political intention, no politician wanted to take a decision and to decide to relocate people. And instead of that, they are building a new Moria. So this is the problem. And if you are asking me what the solution or how we help in this situation and try to give the people a space to speak for themselves, actually we have enough resources to do so. It's all about planning. It's all about missing a strategy for all of us to come together and then to go to Moria to let people speak for themselves, not a foreigner correspondent going there and visit to do media coverage, to do a couple of interviews with people. There is a really touching stories there. There is a people with a great experience, with outstanding skills and life experience, and we have to listen to them. We have to make, not to just to talk about them to the public and to make the awareness, but also to put the pressure on the politicians to move forward, to do something instead of just discussing and negotiating and meeting from time to time in Brussels or in any other European headquarters to discuss the crisis of refugees. It's not a refugees crisis. This is a political crisis, I would say.
Exactly.
Yeah, I totally agree. I can totally relate. And I think I don't only speak for myself if I talk about the huge powerlessness that we also, and maybe also passiveness that we kind of enter into because we are just so horrified by the cruelty that we show every day. I mean, I'm in the Netherlands, just decided that we will take 100 refugees, 100. I'm so ashamed to even pronounce this. It's beyond imagination. And to make it worse, it's not 100 extra. It's actually instead of 100 that we would anyway take next year from UNHCR. So it's really a level of politics that you cannot imagine, and I know you can. So I should not explain this to you, but it's devastating, and it's very. I'm amazed by both of your courage and strength to just continue the struggle, even though we hear this kind of information that just leaves us fully speechless. Before we go back to this huge question, what to do, let's maybe first get back a bit to entangle a little bit more of this super complex situation. So one of the things is that what we hear often European countries saying is that the reason they don't want to welcome more refugees is because they are afraid it will fuel right-wing parties. It will create more racism. It will create more xenophobia. And we also know, and Effie has been talking about Golden Dawn in Greece and also in Italy. We see it happening, or at least maybe we should ask Effie actually how you are experiencing this, because read a couple of articles about locals pushing people on boats back to their country, and it's difficult as an outsider to understand, like, is this massive? Are these individuals? And we can also imagine that before we easily judge and say these are fascists, I can also imagine that the life on the island has just changed drastically, and also people in Greece feel abandoned. So could you maybe say a bit more about the level of...
First of all, I must tell you about this rhetoric that refugees are creating the fascist and all this. In my experience, is the policies that we implement, the criminalization, the exclusion of refugees, the lack of policies to support these people, to empower these people, and the lack of our participation in this system, because actually this is not something, I mean, I believe that migration and refugee issues are very complex, very, very complex, like any human story. And we need for sure include all the powers of the society to deal with this, and not the authorities, not the European project and whatever. We need to be involved in this, and we need to find solutions that are also personalized, because every person has a story. It's not refugees, they are people, and people are different, and they have different and complex stories. And instead of supporting them and protecting them, we re-traumatizing them in the camps, on the way, in Greece, in another camp, on the way to Europe. So these people are for years powerless, traumatized, re-traumatized, humiliated. And then we are talking about what? About integration. This is a very complex story. When I was talking about the Golden Dawn in Greece, we were talking about refugees, that they were arriving, they were detained, criminalized, threatened by the police, beaten, no access to any right, no access to asylum. They were hiding in basements in Athens. And then, of course, there were ghettos, there were small gags. Of course, if you're staying 3 and 4 and 5 years in the streets and you are beaten whenever you are out, of course, there will be some kind of... it's normal, but we created this. And I'm telling you, when we had PICPA open and people were coming and going, we didn't have the same reaction. Of course, we didn't have the same numbers, I know. But in 2015, it was not the same. We had almost 1 million people passed by, 800,000. We didn't have this level of violence that we have now, with less people, with inhuman conditions in Moria, when people were trapped, with all this violence inside and outside in Moria, and with the rhetoric of the local authorities and the government talking about criminals, about detention, about people that they are unwanted. The first that they went out vocally and they were in the press and they were mobilizing people were the local authorities, the mayor, the prefect, the local governor, actually. They were calling people to stop, their entrance to Moria. These privileged people in March, they couldn't, because of the COVID, because all of this happened, and Erdogan using them as a bomb, and the rhetoric in the media was, they are coming, we are facing a threat. The people were a threat, publicly, everywhere in the media. Greeks were protecting their country by stopping refugees from coming. That was insane. And of course, there was fascists that they make profit of this rhetoric, and there was a generalized xenophobic and racist rhetoric that was spread all over. NGOs were criminals. NGOs were bringing the people they were smuggling. Everywhere you hear this. And of course, when the authorities, the local authorities are calling them to mobilize and stop people by entering, like the boat that they were throwing stones to in the 1st of March, at this point, they make blocks. This is a fascist practice, and no police was interfering. They were stopping cars of volunteers, of refugees, of tourists even, because they were not locals, and they were throwing stones, they were beating people. The extreme violence in the 1st of March, 1st to 3 of March this year, we had 300 cars broken by locals. They were stopping the locals to see if they carry refugees or if they carry food. It was crazy, and nobody is talking about this. All our cars were broken. People were threatened. There were Facebook threats, physical threats, beating of people, beating of refugees. Crazy. The level of violence was crazy.
And how do you explain this level of violence? Like, is this rhetoric spreading out? Is this
it's a combination. It was the bad moment that we had riots against the government because they were trying to build a camp here. And this, because we all participated in the resistance to the new camp. After this, it was Erdogan sending the refugees as a bomb. It was the local media talking about a threat and patriotism and whatever. It was the local authorities calling the locals to, as a, calling them to mobilize against refugees. We were protecting our country. And all this rhetoric, of course, about the corrupted NGOs, all of the NGOs were corrupted, all of us were NGOs, no activists, the activists were very bad and they were bringing, all this was there and it was allowed, it was vocal, it was everywhere. And I believe that people were tired in Moria. They are tired living next to a camp. That is, people are suffering, that's a lot of violence. I understand this. But people going against people stopping children of landing, it's unacceptable and should have been, it should have been a court and an investigation on this. And still nothing happened.
Yeah. It's really this position of the lawless. Kashev, I think I have two questions. One is what is Effie is also mentioning is this idea of criminalization not only of refugees but also of NGOs and the alarm phone is also, I was just looking at the website, is also putting today an article about threats that NGOs are getting, captains of rescue boats putting to trial, etc. So one of my questions is this getting worse and what is it fueled by? And the other question is, I believe you are operating a lot in the German context also, if I'm right. And so in the Netherlands, Germany was very much praised by Merkel's Wir schaffen das. On the same time, she of course came back also to a lot of let's say, initial openness or opening the borders. So could you share a bit with us your impressions on if it comes to the repercussions it had for German society?
So first, I want to just mention something. The rise of right-wing not connected to refugee issue, but politician loves to put the blame on refugees and migration flow just to satisfy the right-wing population, and they have this kind of populistic speech to please them. So it's not all because that people, non-European coming to Europe, affecting or driving us to this rise of right wing. No, and actually, as Eva was saying, like right wing, like the local people were doing awful, illegal actions against humans, and there is no reaction from the authorities. There is no investigation. There is not a single court case. And the other side, you find that they are not just, it's not about the criminalization of the migrants, it's not about the criminalization of refugees or even of the civil society NGOs. Now it's criminalizing asylum itself, as it's something bad that we have to get rid of. Like, instead of canceling the asylum system, no, we just criminalizing the asylum itself. We're criminalizing the refugees, we're criminalizing the people who move, we're criminalizing the operations itself, we're criminalizing the NGOs helping, we are criminalizing even the normal people who got empathy about the situation and trying to help with their personal resources, like driving a car or delivering a food or medical equipment. This is crazy. So, and now when it comes to the German context, actually, they open investigations on the NGOs working in the refugee assistance supporting sector, instead of opening investigation on the right-wing groups killing people. Like in Hanau, 6 months ago, they go to the shisha bar, to a coffee shop, and they opened fire to the people. And in the end, for sure, the conclusion is a psychopath did it. They don't want to say it. It's a systematic behavior because of the media, because of the politician language, actually. They wanted to control people through fear. So what's the risk? Erdogan is opening the borders, people are coming, this is a risk. Out of ignorance, ignorant people don't say this is a kind, I'm sorry, but we are living in a capitalism, huh? And this could be a chance. This is a human resources. On the other side, Germany is saying that our labor market need new skills, need migrants and hand workers and experienced and expats. But they don't think about that. We have already people arrived here and we just give them training and orientation. And also the misuse of the integration. Actually, integration, it's a linguistic, it's a nice word because it's the interaction between two cultures, between two human being civilizations. It's not about including someone inside the new society and you have to follow. Otherwise, what the meaning of this integration words they mean? Like me, myself, living here in Germany for more than 3 years or something, and I didn't meet a single German who really integrated in the German society. So what integrate? It's different. Like it's different from the capital, from Berlin, different from Frankfurt, from Hamburg, like even inside the different cities. When I was in Greece, it's totally different in the islands, in Thessaloniki, in Athens. But we don't say it openly. We don't say it clearly. We just talk about general manners, about general social behavior that everyone in the society follow. And this is the problem here.
Yeah, so it has a lot to do with language also, this idea of a myth, the myth of one nation state, the myth of one nationality, the myth of integration. It's all kind of mystified language that actually hides a lot of systematic inequality, systematic oppression, systematic exclusion. And so I would like to go back to that question again, of course, what to do. But before I want to put it a bit aside still, although we also slowly, it's already 9 o'clock, but I will take a bit more time and then check. I see already that there is, yes, okay. So there is one question coming in and I would like to read it because it's so close to what we're discussing. So one of the questions is, what can I as a European citizen do to change the situation? I feel very powerless. So I think this very much resonates with what we're feeling as well, or as at least what I'm feeling also. But before we try to give this person an answer, I would like to even make it a bit more complicated. Because of course we tend now to focus a lot on the borders of Europe and refugee camps like Moria that became very known. Effie's image disappeared. I hope she's still with us. There she is. And I think, Kashev, you also, part of your research is also focusing on what's happening in Turkey, what's happening in Egypt, in Libya. So there are, of course, a lot of refugee camps also at the other side of the Mediterranean, where we maybe speak much less about, and even worse, European Union started a lot of deals, making deals with regimes in Libya and Turkey. So could you maybe both of you share a bit what's happening there? Like, on what level should we imagine people, in what circumstances are people there? Where should change happen if it comes to create better conditions for the people at the other side that we're not even able to cross yet? And how come? How is it possible? And what are the consequences of these deals that we are creating with these regimes?
So, for example, if I wanted to talk about the EU relations with third countries, it was famous in 2016, the scandal of the deal. It's a deal. It's not an agreement. It was a deal with Turkey, give them money to close the borders and keep the people there. The situation in Turkey, actually, for refugees outside the camps or inside the camps, it's not okay. It's not okay at all. They have no right for a lot of things. The UNHCR there cannot operate and cannot work without a permission from the state. And this is the same case in Egypt. In Egypt, for example, there is no national asylum law. It's all on the UNHCR. And UNHCR all the time complaining that they have low capacity and they have to get permissions from the state. And the situation in Libya, I think, it's own. Like last year, the CNN did a report, and it was kind of, if you want to go there, if you don't afraid of your life and you don't have fears, and your agency leave you to go there to do a piece about the things happening there, it's obvious, it's public, it's there for years. That's what makes people actually wanted to cross, because in the first stage, no one will leave her home, no one will leave her comfort zone, okay, her house, family, the life that you used to live, if there is not really danger in your life. And that's what makes people in the first stage flee from their homelands, from the places that they raised in and they have the memories in. And then they move to another country. For example, it's a really big topic if we want to speak in details. But for example, in Egypt, I witnessed when Syrians just to flee Syria because the situation and the war there, and just to flee to Egypt, just to reside in Egypt, to live in Egypt. And the situation was not handleable at all. It was really crazy. You don't have the right to work. You don't have access to public hospitals. You don't have the access to the education system. You have nothing. And there, even if you have this asylum card, it's a yellow UNHCR yellow card there. If you have this asylum card, you have to go to the Egyptian Migration Authority to renew your residence every 6 months. That pushed people and forced people to leave, to cross the sea, to go to Turkey, to cross from Aegean because it's easier and shorter than Central Mediterranean. But all the time they were crossing from Egypt and from Libya. And that makes people arrive here in Europe. And actually, all the time I say that it's not a European responsibility to solve the global migration issue. Handle your internal crisis, handle your issues inside first. But what EU doing is paying money, millions, billions of money every year just to manage the migration, what they call migration crisis. They have a big strategy called migration crisis management. And there's a lot of money. Really, Egypt alone takes 60 million euros from the African Trust Fund for development projects and projects related to refugees. This is just one country, huh? So imagine if we spend this amount of money inside Europe for, call it integration projects, call it development projects, call it whatever you want, projects, just to include the newcomers, the migrants inside the society, to teach them the local languages, to teach them different technical skills that help them to go into market, because they want to be productive. But when you put a human being in hold for 2 years at least, waiting for a paper so they can move, they can live a normal life, what we call normal life, for sure they lose the orientation. So this is a big problem. And actually, just about the question that you said, what to do, every single European citizen have the power. We are living in a democratic countries. At least we still have this democratic system. You have the power of voting. You have the power of putting pressure in your politicians, in your national politicians. You have the power to speak with your neighbors. You have the power to go print a small info sheet from the internet and print it and distribute it in your neighborhood, in your city. This is a power. You are not powerless. Wherever you are not powerless person. You have a lot of tools to do. If you cannot be an activist, or you seen this activism is a big word and I cannot get involved, do these small things. Use the tools in your hand.
Thank you, Kashev. I think that's indeed very important, because we also tend to kind of lament about our own powerlessness, and that's also very privileged, of course. So I think indeed pointing at the very basic and important things that we can do is super important. On the same time, I think part of this powerlessness comes from the fact that, and I'm looking at Effie and imagining how tired you might be, and you told me about possible eviction of PICPA, so you're also having a lot of let's say, struggles and worries that are there at this very moment. And here we are with the three of us, very probably aware, repeating things to each other that we know, that we are so angry and frustrated about, but that we feel we still have to keep on repeating. And on the same time, we know the information is there. So if it's about information sheets, if it's about talking to our neighbors, the neighbors could also be informed. It's a matter of, do you want to be informed? So what do we do against this probably populist rhetoric that is very difficult sometimes to fight with information also? Maybe it's not about information, maybe it's about finding metaphors, maybe it's about finding emotions that can help for people to make this click, that we created this myth of fear. Whereas actually there is plenty of space to share. There's plenty of possibility to be together and become a better nation, instead of this terrible, deep, intense black chapter that we're creating, and that seems to be never ending, with so much guilt and so much death and so much oppression. Effie, maybe you could share your struggles at the moment for PICPA, and also take a moment for a call out that we can, at least all listeners that feel powerless, even though we've all listened to Kashev, what we can do, we can even do more, signing a very important call of Effie that you will talk about a bit now. And maybe you could also respond to what we're talking about now, this feeling of, okay, how do you continue? How do you continue to keep on hope, to fight?
Look, I totally agree with Kasif. I also believe that we cannot give up, because it's about our future. It's about what we want for this future, for this world, for this Europe. So I think we cannot go back to this. We can do small things. I think the most important thing is not to give up first, and then to work, all of us, because we need to work together to find new ways to connect, new ways to react, and it's a process. It's something that is for all our life, but it's important to find it. It's important to work on it. Small things, bigger things, stay connected, be aware as much as we can, and not to live, to understand that this is a struggle for our life, for our future. It's very, very important. And it's in one way for me, really. I'm not saying that we need to suffer or to do the big activists. Small things, stay connected and somehow being there. It's the 8th eviction threat for PICPA, but this time is hard because the moment they decided this new, terrible camp, because the Moria was burned, and I think the only good thing that can happen with Moria was to be burned, finished. It was not, it was there was, so we didn't celebrate because people stayed in the streets, racism, xenophobia grow. We were worried about these people being hungry in the streets of Lesbos. The authorities couldn't even feed them. And they found a military place, they put them in. The idea of the camp prevails. EU is supporting them. That's the most, the really frustrating aspect and the really dangerous aspect of these policies. Okay, we put them in a camp with tents, with nothing, with no water, no electricity. This is details. They don't need water and electricity. Some food, some organization feeding them like animals. Sorry, it's disgraceful. And with a lot of funds, okay. And we put them also in another fence, the COVID, the ones that they were in COVID cases, we put them also in a fence. Great. Anyway, in this context, the government decided that they will close all the alternative camps like PICPA with dignified conditions, and Karate Pet, that is a camp for 1,200 people, that is quite for vulnerable, and they will gather all the people in this new camp, which has no standard. And Europe is watching them, and we have to fight again for PICPA and for the what? For basic things. That dignity, human places are needed more than ever. And if we stop Moria, and if we want to save this society of Lesbos that is really threatened by fascism and xenophobia and racism, we need to decongest the island today. We need to take people in human conditions, to share burden and make a plan after so many years about what will happen with these people. They are not animals, they are people. We cannot move them from one place to the other and being unwanted in different places and suffering, and keep only the dignified shelters that exist. And it is also a much cheaper solution, because what they are creating there will cost a lot of money. For people to suffer, Europe will pay a lot of money. So we call people, because we have 15 days. PICPA will be closed according to the Ministry of Migration and Ministry of Labor in the 15th of August and the end of December, Karate. So in our Facebook, it's Lesbos Solidarity, PICPA. We call people, we have a separate action which is called Save PICPA, Save Dignity. Please follow this, and then we have all the actions there. All these days, there is also a call for groups and collectives. Already 170 they signed a call for action and against the closure of PICPA in our campaign. And we are putting color all over PICPA now. So we try also the active friends of choirs, musicians, painters. We are painting the place, and we believe that is a symbol of solidarity, and we have to go on. I mean, for me, it's reasonable to try to protect Pikpa when a monster is creating next to us. So Save Pikpa, Save Dignity campaign, it's on our Facebook. Join it, share with us. We try to have different actions and stay connected. We need this. We need to keep on going.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Effie. So Lesbos Solidarity, Facebook, Save Pikpa.
I don't know if I wrote it here, but I don't know if I can.
Yes.
I don't know.
Go a little. Yes. Perfect. Keep it in the. So Save Pikpa, Save Dignity. Put it on.
It's
your
on Facebook
or Facebook
and I will
right
write
now.
Also the Lesbos Solidarity.
And follow all the actions around Lesbos Solidarity and Save Pikpa. Very important.
And we need to understand that now in Lesbos, we have a case about alarm phone. We don't know when will be our case, but we are all staying connected with them because what they are fighting is that people are not drowned in the sea, that people, no more lives will lose more lives in this very friendly sea, Aegean, and that we will stop the violation of rights of people, which is a European policy, which is pushback. Pushbacks are happening every day now. And they put the life of people, I'm not talking about the rights, in danger. And instead of stopping pushback, we criminalize NGOs that are working against it. It's disgraceful.
It's insane. It's insane. Kashev, what to think of this extreme absurdity that Effie is articulating so well about the fact that actually this creation of pushbacks, prisons, border is costing so much money, and it's creating bombs out of humans that then create even more violence. How to change this crazy absurdistic logic that is in the end killing us all, because I think that's very important. What Effie is saying is that the only way forward is to fight this, because it's actually also about our lives. And I think that's really important, that we should understand, if we want a world that we can stand for, if we can live a world in which we don't have the feeling that we have to violate morally ourselves constantly, we should fight now. So please, Kashev, any thoughts that you still want to share, because we are rounding up, but any thoughts that you still want to share about this?
I would say it's all about knowledge, about education. It's all about optimism, and not to lose hope for all the people that they are involved in this situation, to keep going on, to keep resist this absurd and this ridiculous behavior of different states, to put pressure on the politicians to change the policies, to keep speaking out with people, with different people, because there is actually people that they are not politicized. They don't care. They don't see the point that you are discussing now about making pumps out of humans because of the violations they face. So simply, each one, teach one. This actually was a simple strategy, I would say, that we learned from the Black African civil movement in the States. They kept their struggle, and they still fighting, and they still struggling about their rights. And we learn from this movement a lot since ages, like since decades, at least 60 years, and they still doing that. They still educating the new generation. They don't lose the hope. They are looking for a change. And when they, for the first time in the history, the US had a Black president, for sure it didn't last. For sure he was also going with the same political identity of the state. But the thing that we cannot stop until we see the society that we are like to live in, or at least when we are dying and it's our end of the time on the earth, we feel that we didn't stop. We don't regret a simple move that we make for seeing a better life, not just for others, but also for us.
Thank you so much, Kashev, Effie, for this very moving words. I'm deeply touched. Each one teach one. I think that's really beautiful to end with. Also because with that sentence, you combine different struggles that are so much inspiring each other and reinforcing each other. I have one last thing to share, because also in Belgium, there's an action coming from cultural institutions demanding for Belgium society to take on refugees. And they are actually, and again, School of Resistance is launching a call as we want to ask European policymakers that every art and cultural institution that signs this open letter to the European Commission be given the right to receive and support a refugee. We therefore ask for a visa for Belgium for one refugee per signatory. Let's rehumanize Europe together. So this is one small action that we started, and everyone that's interested and wants to sign the petition can go to entegent.be. And hopefully it's made possible for every cultural institution to support a refugee by applying for visa. Thank you so much, Effie Latsudi, Mohammed Al-Kashev, for your super important input, your courage, your strength, your energy, your time to spend with us. Please let us know, let's stay in touch whenever we can help each other to find each other and use the resources we have to amplify our voices. Thank you so much. Keep on the good work.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Pleasure to meet you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a nice evening. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Ciao.